Hello, this is Steve Waters, the Flood Warning Branch Manager here at the Flood Control District. I'm going to talk a little bit about some new things we're doing in flood warning and specifically the alert system this year, 2018. We have been converting our alert stations to a new format called Alert 2. And Alert 2 allows some advantages over Alert 1, one of which is the number of IDs is greatly increased, but Alert 2 treats IDs a little differently than Alert 1 did. In the old Alert, each sensor out in the field had its own ID number, and with Alert 2, the ID is assigned to the station, with the station being one physical place that has a number of sensors hooked up to it. And then the sensors are just given IDs like 0 or 1 or 7, or depending on the type of sensor it is. So across the country, there's been a move to make you unique IDs for unique alert systems. So we chose to use station IDs in the range of 50,000 to 5999. So that gives us 1,000 station IDs, and should be plenty. Other Arizona counties will have station IDs that start with 51 or 52. But again, the station ID carries the data, and in the data, and each one has a number to it. So it comes as a packet now rather than one piece of data for each device that used to be out there. You can see on the slide, it says therefore at station 50308, the rain gauge ID is 30800. The temperature ID is 30801, etc. Any Alert 2 station, if you drop the 50 and add 00, you'll get the precip ID. We've done a little bit of work based on requests of users to the Meteorological Services Program forecast zones. We expanded the size of South Phoenix and South Scottsdale to make it a little easier to provide unique forecasts for those areas. And therefore, North Phoenix and North Scottsdale got a little bit smaller. We added a Southeast Valley zone, basically south of Loop 202. And so the East Valley zone has shrunk to the areas north of that southern border of the 202. And we added a new zone called Gila River that goes from Arizona Avenue over to the county boundary. So look in products, whether outlooks or messages, you'll see the new zones and us providing forecasts and information for those. We did send out a letter to all the email recipients that talked about the change and specifically how to go into GovDelivery, our mail client, and select just the zones that you want. Our flood response plan project this year was to do an update for Cave Creek, and Cave Creek was first done, I believe, in 2009, and so it was time for an update. It's been almost 10 years. So we went through with existing floodplains, new floodplains, some work using HAZ-US to pick out structures and road crossings and such. And we built a new Google map for the flood response plan. So rainfall, stream flow data will always be live, and it's very interactive. You can bring up pages from the flood response plan. There are a lot of pictures of the unbridged crossings, just a number of improvements, and that will be going live here after June 16th when we meet with Cave Creek. Lastly, this year we put in 2 new flashing flooded roadway signs. These signs are activated by gauges in the field that reach a threshold either of depth of water or amount of rain. Flashing sign has an alert receiver that's always listening, and when it gets data that represents that threshold, it turns on the lights. We can also manually turn them on from here in our flood control office. So the 2 new ones are on New River's crossing of Old Stage Road, which is just north of the school, and also on Bartlett Lake Road at Camp Creek, which is a very wide floodplain. So those two flashing sensors are about a half a mile apart to give ample warning before people get down into where there could be water. And I believe that's it for my presentation.
So we're today at Sycamore Creek, which is up just south of Payson. It's a tributary to the Verde River. We have a gauge here because this place burned about 6 years ago, and the Forest Service asked us to put a gauge here. So part of the Sycamore Creek stream gauging system we have above me is a radar sensor. This radar sensor, rather than measuring water level from below, measures it from above. It shoots a beam of radar down, and as the water level rises, it can measure the level of the water that way. Here at Sycamore Creek, we have something that's not necessarily installed everywhere, but we have it at a few locations. This is a status sensor, and what this does, it doesn't necessarily measure the level of the water, but when the water hits a certain level here in the sensor, it'll trigger a switch inside of it, and that will tell us back at our office that the water has reached a certain critical level that we need to be more aware that there is rising water here at this creek. So part of Sycamore Creek, we're working with the U.S. Geological Survey, and they've installed what they have called a Continuous Slope Area Reach, or CSA, and that involves, at this location, a data logger, which is low to the ground, and it consists of a pressure transducer as well, which will record the level as it rises and falls, and they can come back, and actually they have to come back and download this data, take it back to analyze it. But this allows them to give us a continuous slope area, continuous discharge of what's going on here, so that we can figure that out after the event. So some of you may wonder how we determine how much water is actually flowing through a wash when it does flow. Not just the height of the water, but how much volume is flowing through it. And we want to calculate the volumetric cubic feet per second. And how we do that is a match of geometry and mathematics. So we survey a cross section here, which is perpendicular to the flow. As water is flowing upstream to downstream, we survey the cross section this way. And as you can see, as I move down, it's a little higher here. As I move down to the lower part of the cross section, this area will obviously contain more water, and it'll be a little bit faster through here. And as it goes up to the other bank over there, it gets higher and it'll have less water in it. So what we do through mathematics of calculating the cross-sectional area, at this one we calculate one upstream, we calculate one downstream, which gives us the slope of the channel. From there, we can determine how much water is actually flowing through this in a volume amount. So that's how we convert feet of water to cubic feet per second. So here at Sycamore Creek, as at most of our stream gauges, most of the level is measured with a pressure transducer. And we have one here that I'm going to demonstrate for you. So I took the cap off, which goes here, and inside there's a diaphragm. And as water hits the diaphragm, that's when pressure goes against it, and it begins to show the water level rise as it's going up. And so with a calibration, it knows when 1 foot of water is actually here due to the pressure differences. Is as it continues to rise, the pressure increases, and our system knows how to convert that into actual feet of water level.
This is Daniel Hens, meteorologist with the Flood Warning Branch. I'm here to talk to you about some changes to GovDelivery in both the weather outlook and then the weather statements. First of all, the weather outlook. We made changes back in 2016. We revamped the look of the weather outlook, and we went ahead a few months ago and actually released a new updated version with an updated layout. So as you can see here, as far as content's pretty much the same. We've just tried to update again the color theme, some of the images and graphics. But again, all the content that you found in the original weather outlook is still being provided in the new weather outlook. Of note, I would like to highlight that the heat risk is still included just below the forecast. You can see by my cursor here. Clicking on that would actually take you to the National Weather Service forecast heat risk page, which will show you the next 7 days worth of heat risk. As far as the air quality forecasts, those still exist as well. In the second box below the heat risk, you can click that and be taken to ADEQ's page to see the next 5-day forecast for air quality. I want to point out the bottom right of the Outlook now contains 3 buttons, which will make it easier for you to contact us, to enter into GovDelivery to update or change your preferences, as well as unsubscribe if you choose to, and also if you have subscriber help. Moving on, the lake alert, again, was last updated in 2016. Again, just some minor cosmetic changes. We're making the image a little bit larger and easier to see. The content end of the comments synopsis section will still be the same. And then we're moving the information that was originally underneath the image will be on the right-hand menu. Again, just matching the same look and theme as the weather outlook. Again, a similar story with the message statements. So that's, again, message 1 alerts, message 2 flash flood watch, and message 3 flash flood warning. Message 4 cancel. They'll all take on this new similar look. We're removing the content underneath the image and putting in the right hand bar. Content under comments will still be the same. Again, the main point of this is just trying to make one unified theme throughout the weather outlook, statements, lake alerts. I would like to point out that the MSP forecast zones have been updated for this year. You'll notice North Scottsdale, South Scottsdale, and South Phoenix forecast zones have all changed. They've made them a little bit bigger and they've expanded in sections. Furthermore, the original Southeast Valley has been expanded and broken down now into the East Valley, Gila River, and Southeast Valley forecast zones. Now, it's going to be important for any of you folks that live in the Southeast Valley that were originally receiving messages. You want to go ahead and update your user preferences. I'm going to show you how to do that just to make sure you can still be receiving alerts. You can go to any one of the message statements, weather outlooks, lake alerts, any product from us. If you click on the preferences or unsubscribe button right there, it'll send you over to the Maricopa County GovDelivery subscription page. Just select email, type in your email address, hit submit. That'll take you to your subscriber preferences. Or if you click on the questions tab, it will then pull up your subscriber preferences and scroll down to the question that says, in what forecast zones are you interested in receiving updates? Go ahead and select any of the forecast zones you'd like to be able to receive updates for, and you'll be all set. Click submit, and your changes will be saved. This can be done at any time and should only take you a minute or 2 to complete. I also wanted to point out that we're still sending out text alerts for all GovDelivery issued message statements. You can sign up at any time by sending me an email to danielhens@mail.maricopa.gov. You do have to be a verified user on the weather statements distribution list. These are not made available to the public. So like I said, if you'd like to receive text alerts to your work phone or to your own personal phone, send me an email with your number and I'll get you added.
Hello, my name is Chandra Miller, and I am the Flood Warning Program Specialist in the Flood Warning Branch at the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. This video is just a short refresher of the main alert interactive data display map. Not much has changed in the past year. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. So we'll go to the map, take a look. I just first of all want to remind you that our stream flow markers do change. They will go from blue to green to orange to red as they increase to flood stage. If you want to know that particular location and what do we mean by flood stage, you can always pull up the current conditions graphic off your marker, and right here you see alarm bank full flood stage. So flood stage at that particular location would be 3 feet. So that is going to be a really easy way to know Where should I be looking? Where do I see the streams that have a lot of water in them, as opposed to something that's just more of a minor flow? Our layers section, we did update our MSP forecast zone layer. And you can see that we have additional zones down here. The new zones have been reflected in our flash flood potential layer. So make sure that you know what zone you are in. Our flood forecast locations link you directly to the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. You can get to USGS sites. So if USGS has any additional gauges, this one will link you straight to the site. Something new on the map is our webcam up in Wickenburg. This webcam is on Sunny Cove FRS. It puts a picture on here every hour, and there will be 3 additional webcam images coming up on our structures by the end of July. So that will be a fun thing to watch as the summer goes on. We still have our WDT radar. It loops. Make sure you turn it on. Make sure you loop it. The National Weather Service Ridge 2 radar was taken off. They changed the location of the files. So as soon as I can get the new location and get it up and running, we'll add that back so you have multiple radars to look at. I just wanted to show you guys, if you ever want to know any historic rainfall, I encourage you to come to this map and do historic. You can get your point rainfall data. If it shows down, a lot of time it's because that it's a new gauge from the time that you picked. But we also have this map overlay. So what the map overlay is doing is using a geo processing service and going out and doing some GIS work. So it's using the point rainfall data as the Z value and using natural neighbors and triangulating the location. So it outputs a very nice overlay with a legend. So this is a great place to go to visually see what's happening instead of just seeing that point rainfall data. Besides that, I want to make sure you guys know about this decision support page. They're looking at past events, rainfall data, hydrographs, and current condition graphics, and kind of giving a summary of what happened. So it's a really good place to go to do some decision making and see what past events have happened there. If you go to the map on your phone, it's going to pull up your mobile version. It doesn't have all of the bells and whistles as the desktop version does, but you can get to your streamfall and your rainfall data and the layers like the flash flood potential. Definitely bookmark both of these maps. The mobile one, do a add to home screen, and then you can access it in one click. So it's like an app that opens this map up. So if you go to our custom products and maps and plans page, you can get to the flooded roadway map, find any location that may have a additional flood response plan map. And if a really big storm is going over a particular location, check and see if we have a map. Those online maps in the layers have lots of information. You can pull up watersheds, particular flood condition maps, add FEMA floodplains. So lots of information. If you guys have any questions about the maps, you can contact us through here. We love having you guys use the data. Hello, my name is Chandra Miller, and I am a flood warning program specialist here at the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. Today, I am going to be talking about the Cave Creek Flood Response Plan update. So the main idea of flood control and the flood warning branch is we need to figure out where the flood hazards are, how to prevent them, and how to reduce the risk of injury, loss of life, and property damage. We have 8 flood response plans throughout the county. They're for specific jurisdictions or watersheds. This particular one is operated by the town of Cave Creek. and they rely on support from Flood Control and National Weather Service. So the flood response plan has 5 different sections. It's flood detection, the knowing, and prediction. So where is it going to rain and where is it going to flood? Recognizing what that means, disseminating the information to the correct people. So that would be the correct agencies and departments within Cave Creek, and figuring out what you do in an emergency, where to go, what to do, who's doing what. So here's a location map just showing Cave Creek. Flood detection, I think we're all pretty familiar with. It's weather monitoring in our alert gauge network. The public can see our weather outlook, but as a branch, we also are sending out message 1, 2, 3, and 4. These messages are not for the public. They are for the individual agencies and departments that are responsible for responding to some type of flood event. So these are the town marshal, our sheriff's department, fire department, public works that are going to shut the streets down. Here's an example of what our weather outlook and message statement looks like. Here's some fun pictures at Cave Creek at Spur Cross, Cave Creek at Cave Creek, and Galloway Wash at Galloway Road. So these are the 3 main stream gauges that are within the town. A big part of the flood response plan is your flood threat recognition. So this is looking at particular road crossings and travel times and structures that may be within the flood hazard zone. We took a really good look and identified the road crossings that could have flooding. Low water crossings, culverts, bridges, all of them are combined. But we're looking at the road crossings and the available lead times that are identified on a watershed basis. So throughout the plan, there's detailed maps for each of the watersheds. The little caution signs with the numbers are the locations of the roadway. So these are the crossings of concern. You can look at number 5, come down here, and it says it's Desert Hills Road. So we'll touch on those yellow and alert levels in a little bit, but this is how you are finding the location. And then there's travel times that are also associated. So we have very detailed graphs in tables within the flood response plan that displays the 100-year discharge, distance, velocity, and travel time. So for that particular Desert Hills Drive, the 100-year discharge is 24,700 CFS. But we can look and we can see, oh, well, if our gauge upstream records the 100-year flow event, to get from 1 to 5, the flood wave will take 40 minutes. And it's a very good tool to have to know how long it's going to take the water to go from one particular spot to another, especially if you need to send crews out to go barricade roads. The numbering continues throughout each of the watersheds. The discharge information is really useful because it can kind of help you prioritize which road is going to have higher velocity, higher discharge, and you can use it as a decision-making tool. We also identified structures at risk within the FEMA flood hazard zone. There are 88 structures identified. 52 of those are residential. These are very important to know the location of, because if there is a large flow along Cave Creek, these particular homes may be in jeopardy. And another big thing with Cave Creek is our loss of access. Because Cave Creek is so large and there's a lot of homes on the west side, the only way in and out is through Cave Creek. And if there is flow on Cave Creek, that means the residents can't get out and any emergency responders can't get in. Most of the people living there are aware that they just need to wait it out, but there are particular locations like Red Dog Drive. There is no stream gauge or rain gauge in the upper watershed. It is a location that we have identified would benefit from a rain gauge, but these people do have lots of access. So that's something that's very important for the emergency responders to know. Good communication is the key to making these work well. As flood control, we are sending out our messages and alerts, but it is the town of Cave Creek, and specifically the town marshal or the emergency services coordinator, who is in charge of reviewing all the outlooks, messages and alerts sent from Flood Control and National Weather Service. They also coordinate with the appropriate personnel to declare an alert level. In Cave Creek, we have 2 alert levels, yellow alert and red alert. What does that mean? The routine is just our day-to-day. It's sunny and nice and amazing because we live in Arizona. A yellow alert is what the city will do during a flood event or leading up to a flood event. They put their town on standby that they're in a yellow alert. It's used for a situation that causes a higher degree of readiness than is normally present. And then a red alert is used when hazardous conditions are imminent or occurring. That can be a flash flood warning or a message 3 from Flood Control District. So it's kind of like a step up. What should the city be doing? And what roads are we going to need to look at? What homes may be in jeopardy? Because that's a lot to know for everyone. We have these flow charts, lay out what everybody should be doing at that particular alert level. So if I was Public Works and I worked for the town of Cave Creek and I found out it was a yellow alert, I could go right to this flow chart and find out what roads need to have barricades. And then there's also a flood condition map. For a yellow alert, there are not as many crossings of concern because there's no imminent hazard to life or property. But as we ramp up and we get to a red alert, you can see the town marshal needs to be aware of the loss of access. There's residential homes that are within the floodplain. And so we need to make sure we're monitoring that and making sure none of those people need to be evacuated. And he doesn't need to worry about closing the streets because Public Works has their own flow chart and they know exactly where they should be going and what they should be looking at also. So here's the red alert flood condition map. And then on top of this, there's our wall map. So the wall map has all of those locations. There's a large map mounted that they can put in their EOC. There is a brand new online flood response plan map. It is changed to the Google format. So I'll just open that map up real quick and show you guys. So this is the default view of the map. We have our rain gauges that will turn when there's actually rain, our strain gauges that change color and show the discharge. And then all of these black and green dots are the crossings of concern. So if you click on any of them, they will tell you the name, the location, and give you a picture of what that particular road crossing looks like. So this is Desert Hills Road, so location 5, and you can see this is Cave Creek. It's unbridged. And it definitely would need to be barricaded and these people lose access. The markers that are green will turn red and they will start flashing when they need to be closed. So operationally, Cave Creek can just keep this map open and they can get right to know when they need to close the road. They can also go to layers and do things like overlay the FEMA floodplains. They can overlay the watershed boundary. And if you click on the watershed, you can get to the flood condition maps right there. So a lot of tools in one place. All right, that is an overview of the Cave Creek Flood Response Plan. Again, we've taken a very, very in-depth look of everything in Cave Creek and how flooding would affect the town. And it's a coordinated effort through the county and the town. We can work together and try to keep everyone safe. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out.
This is Daniel Hens, meteorologist, the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. This is our 5th annual Monsoon Outlook. We're going to be talking about the upcoming monsoon season for 2018. And with that, let's get started. So the monsoon officially runs from June 15th to September 30th. Though anyone that lives here knows that typical onset, increased moisture moving up into the state, as well as the onset of thunderstorms, tends to happen a little bit later than that, usually around July 7th. So the North American monsoon actually means seasonal change in wind shift or precipitation pattern. So for most of the year, winds tend to blow from west to east. However, during the summer monsoon, our wind shift tend to be out of the southeast. The main driving factor with that is a subtropical high or monsoon ridge that lifts north out of northern Mexico in the late spring and early summer. Clockwise flow around that high helps bring in mid-level moisture from northern Mexico as well as from the Gulf of Mexico. Intense surface heating across the lower deserts happens to also create a thermal heat low, which brings moisture in from the Gulf of California as well as out the Pacific. As moisture makes its way into the higher terrain, daytime heating, we get thunderstorms across the Mogollon Rim, White Mountains, or even the Sky Islands of southeast Arizona. As moisture increases later into the summer, some of that activity may be able to make its way down into the lower valleys. It's important to note it's not always a thermal low that helps draw that mid and low level moisture. It can also be from an intrusion from tropical cyclones, it can come from inverted troughs, as well as early or late season upper level troughs that bring moisture off the Pacific. The main point here, though, is that ridge location is key. The monsoon ridge does not stay fixed throughout the summer. It actually shifts around. And we actually have some historically preferred places actually getting increased thunderstorm activity and potentially increased rainfall, especially for our region of South Central Arizona. Now, the example of Four Corners High in the top left here is what we just covered in the slide before. There's also what's known as a Great Basin High, where that monsoon ridge shifts further to the west over the Great Basin, and we get strong easterlies that help bring storms off the higher terrain in an organized fashion onto the lower deserts. The other location of note that I'd like to bring up is what would be the West Texas or Southern Plains High, where the ridge of high pressure actually shifts further east into West Texas or across eastern North Mexico. And this can be an all or nothing pattern for us. Nothing in that, typically it promotes southwesterly flow, which is actually dry during the summer, and without the help of some other feature, tends to be quiet. However, when you introduce a tropical cyclone or moisture intrusion from a dying tropical cyclone to our southwest, this pattern can be very favorable for bringing that moisture up and into the state. You also can have an early season or a late season cutoff low off the west coast of California that can bring upper level forcing and help, again, enhance this pattern to create organized thunderstorms and heavy rainfall across parts of the state. What you're looking at here is the past 34 years average monsoon rainfall. This is being gathered from alert rain gauges spread out around Maricopa County. As you can see, the average is 2.97 inches. Last year in 2017, we were right around our average, coming in at 3 inches. And some of you may be asking, I thought 2.71 was the average. And you'd be correct. That'd be the average at Phoenix Sky Harbor. But in this case, we're actually looking at the complete rainfall when averaged across the entire county. The main point I want to get across showing this slide is that you can see it's almost like a roller coaster from year to year, some years being dry, some years being wet, but no clear pattern. And what you're seeing on the map here is rainfall as percent of normal. And what we can see is areas that have greens and the yellows were below average. Areas in oranges, reds, and whites were above average. Now, if you happen to live in north central Phoenix or in parts of the Southeast Valley, you'd say it was a pretty dry monsoon. However, if you lived in Wickenburg, the West Valley, or even parts in Queen Creek or southern Gilbert, it was actually quite wet. So in terms of rainfall, the distribution of rain is widely varied, can be very localized, and it kind of mimics the type of thunderstorms we see. Here you're looking at NOAA's Climate Prediction Center 3-month summer outlook. This is for July, August, and September. This is a 3-class forecast, which is giving you a probability for above, below, or normal for a particular variable. In the case of temperature, there's a 66% chance of above normal temperatures, 3% chance for below normal temperatures, and 31% chance for normal temperatures. Ultimately, the forecast is favoring normal to above normal temperatures. Now, if we happen to take a look at the precipitation map, it's actually calling for a 37% chance of above, 30% chance for below, and 33% chance for normal, though the odds just slightly favor above normal rainfall. Ultimately, though, this is a 3-month average forecast, and it doesn't tell us a whole lot about what to expect each month or on a week-to-week basis or an event basis. So what's going on with the El Nino Southern Oscillation? We're currently in the neutral phase. This previous winter, we were in La Nina. And as we move into the summer, we're expected to remain neutral. Though it is possible we may enter a weak El Nino phase as we move into the fall and then upcoming winter. Here you're looking at the summer precipitation distribution for Climate Division 96. That actually encompasses South Central Arizona. And here what we can see is regardless of El Nino, neutral, or La Nina conditions, the distribution is pretty spread out and there's no real consensus between wet versus dry. Especially for neutral, we're actually seeing the largest distribution where we've seen very wet seasons and very dry seasons. Here we're looking at global sea surface temperature anomalies. The yellows, oranges, and reds represent warmer than average sea surface temperatures, where the blues and darker blues represent colder than average sea surface temperatures. And I'd just like to highlight a few locations. First of all, we can look at the tropical Pacific, highlighted with the red box. And here we can see again that neutral, end zone neutral pattern being evident, with some areas of slightly warmer and some areas of slightly cooler sea surface temperature anomalies here. What I would like to point out is the circle highlighted in blue for the Gulf of California and Gulf of Mexico. We zoom in, here we can see 1 to 2 degree temperature anomalies across the Gulf of Mexico, as well as across the central and southern portions of the Gulf of California. So what you're looking at here are sea surface temperatures as of June 5th. These are in degrees Celsius. The reason I'm bringing this up is work from Mitchell et al. In 2002 talks about the importance of the Gulf of California sea surface temperatures from the central Gulf all the way to the northern portions, reaching a critical 27.5 degrees Celsius. And the main goal here is, as soon as the central and northern parts of the Gulf reach 27.5 degrees Celsius, it's been shown that 91% of the rain we see during the monsoon occurs after this point. Now, if you take a look at where we are right now, on average anywhere from 24 to 26 degrees Celsius, we're getting very close. We are much warmer than average for this time of year. It's also important to note this time of year, heat transfer happens around 1 to 2 degrees Celsius every week. We could be reaching that 27.5 degrees Celsius threshold within the next few weeks or late June. It's a strong indicator of an early onset to the monsoon. I'd like to take a look at antecedent soil conditions, and we're looking up over the previous winter. Here you can tell much of the west was very, very, very dry, highlighted by the yellows, oranges, and reds. Now, just to the east of the Pacific Northwest, across Montana, Wyoming, and in the northern parts of Washington, it was actually quite wet. But for our instances here, research shows that we typically tend to see wetter monsoons following drier winters. The main impetus behind this is helping getting poleward advection of the monsoon ridge out of northern Mexico. The drier winter seems to help pull that ridge further north a little bit faster, again helping this idea of an early onset to the monsoon, thus giving you a greater or a longer active period for which you can have thunderstorm activity. The final piece of information we'd like to take a look at is the East Pacific Hurricane Outlook for this upcoming 2018 season. I actually just grabbed this image this morning, and you can see on there Tropical Storm Aletta, which is soon to be a hurricane, and it's the first tropical cyclone of the East Pacific season. It's kind of cool, it's spinning there right now. Is it an impetus of things to come? Let's find out. So the National Hurricane Center has predicted 2018 to be above normal as the favored outcome for the season. We have 14 to 20 named storms, 7 to 12 hurricanes, 3 to 7 of which would be major hurricanes. Last year was a near normal season. However, the predictions for this year tend to favor more of like what we saw in 2014, 2015, and 2016 with much above normal cyclone activity. The reason this is important is later on in the season, all it takes is one of these systems or even just moisture from one of these systems to make their way up and into the state of Arizona. They can aid in enhanced thunderstorm development as well as the potential for heavy rainfall. Final thoughts. NOAA Climate Prediction Center's forecast is calling for above normal temperatures as well as a slight edge to wetter than normal precipitation. Based on the predictive factors that we've covered here today, we're expecting to see an early onset. Basically, pre-July start to thunderstorm activity across our part of Maricopa County, South Central Arizona. Now, given that we're expecting to see a longer active season and combine that with the prospect of a robust hurricane season, we're going to go ahead with a wetter than normal precipitation outlook for this upcoming monsoon season. We always like to state that it only takes 1 or 2 heavy rain events to reach the historical monsoon rainfall quota. It's also important to note, any location in the Phoenix Valley is subject to flooding or flash flooding problems if enough rain falls in the proper duration. Now is the time to prepare, and there's lots of information available. I encourage you all to go to fcd.maricopa.gov, where you can find information on preparedness as well as this upcoming monsoon season. You can also follow us on Facebook as well as on Twitter at FCD Flood Info, where we're releasing weather updates throughout the season.